This episode of the Good Ship Brothership is brought to you by I Can't Believe It's Not Brother. As hard as it is to believe, trust us, it's not brother.
It's not.
To get your free demo today, go to www.brothersareforchumps.net and try spreading I Can't Believe It's Not Brother in your ears, on your soul, or down the tubes of your digestive system. I can't believe it's not brother. For the brother free and the brother filled. Amen.
We might trim that out.
Just put birdsong around it and then they'll be like,
I
what
don't
is he
have
laughing at?
stock sounds of birdsong. Okay, can we move the table this way a little bit? Just because I don't want the mic stand bumping it. No, not towards you, you goon.
I love how rickety the table sits.
Yeah.
Towards the table?
Yeah, like that way. It's
Okay.
fine now. It's fine now.
Sorry. How's it going?
Hey.
It's quite late. One of the latest
quite
times
good.
we've recorded. Again.
Yeah, in quite some time.
It's 11:09 and we're just getting warmed up.
We do a lot of questionable stuff, guys.
And I have to get up at probably like 7:15,
All right,
7:30.
well, let's not get our
something like that.
complainy pants on just yet. You love
One of my favorite times.
You love to complain about how you need to go to bed.
One of my
That's
favorite scenes.
One of my favorite.
One of my
one
favorite
of the things that
scenes
you are
from
best
The Monk
at,
is
and
when
that's
from
just
Monk,
a hobby that
the
I
show,
can tell that you
is when
cherish
he's
almost above
on
your car
the
obsession. To
plane,
be honest,
and there's that little girl who's doing like the Pete. And
I can
Repeat
tell
fell
that
out of the
now
boat.
you.
Who was left?
Now that I'm
Repeat.
talking while you're talking,
And then
I
she
stop,
says to him,
"You could almost
you complain
not
a lot.
even handle
You
the
should
silence."
be called Mr.
Welcome aboard the Good Ship Brothership. Here comes the theme music. That's enough of that. Okay, I'm slightly put off now. Oh,
I'm like a third of the way through Ori now. You should get playing it sometime. Maybe we can drop a sauce little review in there.
but I'm
It's
playing
not-
Broken Age now.
Yeah, well that's true.
I'm trying to push through and finish that like pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
That's fair. I should get a bit more into it. I'm only like an hour in. We'll do a quick thing on what we've been
Pretty fun.
playing and watching and reading and stuff, because I have a lot of interesting stuff I've been doing.
Yeah. I can't believe we've stuck with this theme song for so long, and there's like 98 others. I think.
100, because there's number 0, and it goes up to 99.
Is there 0? Cast your votes in the comments for which number we should use as our theme song next week.
I don't think anyone will. Maybe one person will.
Did I pause that?
No.
I think I did.
Okay.
Oh man, it just trails off. Welcome aboard the Good Ship Brothership. You're aboard the only arts podcast which covers film, music, gaming, literature, and slap chop competitions. I'm Grant, and this is my brother Jason. Jason, what are we talking about today on this show?
Today, we are doing the most timely podcast we've ever done,
Ever.
which is to say, still not very.
Not very.
But we are reviewing the brand new film Dunkirk, produced by James Cameron.
Okay.
Wait a second. And
It's killer joke.
Arcade Fire's new album, which is called Everything Now.
Yes. Okay, now, man, we've rolled straight through into this.
Oh, well, we were going to talk about what we've been playing and stuff. We were just talking about the turn.
I'm sorry, yes.
You disrupted the flow. So,
Also, I was gonna try and find your peanut
Yeah.
M&Ms
Oh.
to snark on,
Well, we
but
can get some
you
of those.
squirreled them away.
No, I just put them up in the cupboard upstairs. I'll get them after we talk about this stuff.
you squirreled them.
While you flip the puppet. So, I'll go first,
Okay,
because I'm nice. And I've had a lot of good stuff going on.
so nice.
I've started during my breaks at work bringing like a book to read or a game to play or something. Because, I mean, you got like an hour and a half of untapped potential there. So I reread all of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which is one of my favorite books of all time. Did we review it for this show? No? Don't really need to. It's fantastic. It's perfect. And then I also read The Sunset Limited by Cormac McCarthy. Stage play / novella. Really interesting story. Talking about kind of God and humanity and motivation for living or lack thereof, as it's a play that really deals with suicide and finding joy in life and finding joy outside of life kind of thing. Really interesting. Highly recommended. Maybe we'll review it one day. I doubt it. For games, I've been trucking along in Paladin still, just about at 100 hours, which I never do for a game. Like, I don't know if I ever have, aside from Gran Turismo.
Dark Souls?
Well, the franchise, but not either of the games, probably. And then I'm playing Ori and the Blind Forest, which we may or may not review. Excellent, beautiful 2D platformer, just a charming little game.
Super popular.
Yeah.
As well. Very acclaimed.
And I've just started Broken Age as well. I'm just about an hour into that. So far, so good. You mentioned that last time.
Did I?
Yeah. Just a solid Tim Schafer adventure game.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, because you're like double flying.
No.
Or-
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
as of yesterday, I picked up Butterscotch Shenanigans mobile game, Crashlands, which is like a crafting survival RPG.
And unfortunately, it's all I've heard out of you since.
Really charming, really fun, hilarious dialogue, surprisingly good combat. Why don't you talk about what you're playing, and then I'll give you permission to flip the puppet. I want Eyes Up to be Dunkirk, and I'm gonna go get the M&Ms.
Okay.
Talk about what you've been doing first, though.
I haven't been playing. Oh, so you're leaving now?
Yeah. Like just,
Okay.
Like
Okay.
stall until I get back.
All right. I guess. Okay, he's gone. I haven't been playing a lot in terms of video games, just because I've been working on a couple of my own projects in a lot of my spare time and my not spare time as well. In terms of music, I've listened to. I'll listen to Arcade Fire for this show, of course. I've been listening still to Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits like a maniac. And I was listening to I'm Wide Awake It's Morning by Bright Eyes for the past couple days. I was just telling the kids that I was listening to I'm Wide Awake It's Morning quite a bit in the truck.
Music I've been listening to.
As far as reading, as far as reading, I'm decently stalled, honestly. Still in As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner, which I just need to like buckle down and read, but it's difficult for me to find the time to like sit and read a lot. I've been just binging Peaky Blinders on Netflix, which is quite possibly the top 3 television shows I've ever seen.
I need to watch it. I think still just have one more episode of Luther.
Absolutely fabulous. It's like great stories, amazingly good characters, dripping in style, nicely shot, beautifully, geniusly scored with like modern music, like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
That's a good one.
Absolutely fantastic.
Add the National to your list of upcoming
albums.
albums.
That's definitely one of them that I was missing. And aside from that, I haven't been ingesting much.
That's good.
Still playing Broken Age, as I said, chipping away at Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, but I find it hard to stay motivated when you're just stuck on just one boss. As you know, I find it very hard to stay motivated.
But you don't want your skills to atrophy too much.
I know, that's the thing. Like, you have to try it, like, for a half hour every day. Or, like, an hour every day. So, anyway. Is it that time where we flip the puppet?
Yeah, I guess. I've also been listening to a ton of the IGN UK podcast, and I think we need to be everything they are. Except slightly less drunk.
Is that face down?
That's face down.
So, it's everything now first.
Uh-huh.
Right? Let me just write this down.
And for the record, I don't think I've ever had this many...
Oh, jeez.
I don't think I've ever had this little of, like, interest to say. Not because of anything with the album, but I just feel like I don't really have insight into this album because it's really different from anything we've ever reviewed.
Do you think?
It maybe would be most...
Do you want to go first? Because it sounds like you do.
No, not really. I can. All right,
I'm just saying, it sounds like you got stuff to say, despite the fact that you keep saying you have nothing to say.
So, Arcade Fire is a band that I am really only familiar with in the merest of passings. They had that song, They Were Up All Night to Get Lucky. Still don't know what that was about. Maybe if I go back and listen to it, it's a good song now, but at the time... who was that? That was some French band. Was that not them?
That's Daft Punk.
Are they French?
Yeah.
Okay.
These guys are from Quebec.
Daft Punk is French?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I thought that you were joking.
No, I've never listened to either of them before.
I can tell.
Um,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry.
This
is an arts podcast.
I forgot about that, to be honest.
You just confused Arcade Fire with Daft Punk.
Yeah, I did. Well, hang on.
Peanut M&M's bag rustling coming.
What I would ask is this. Could you name a single Arcade Fire song before this album?
Absolutely.
Really?
Suburbs, No Cars Go. There's 2 right there.
There's 2.
Reflector.
Oh, Reflector.
I
guess Reflector was huge.
Funeral. I mean, I can name albums.
Yeah.
More than I can name songs.
But all that to say, I'm vastly ignorant about Arcade Fire before this. Wow, you stuck the landing, didn't you?
Where did that go? Whoa!
You just threw an M&M onto my shoulder because I have such broad shoulders. So, putting ignorance and embarrassment aside, I went into this album really not knowing what to expect and sort of expecting I'd be indifferent on it. Definitely wasn't. I would say this is a overall very positive review. I thought it was a really good album. That's kind of funky. It has some groove. It's overall a fairly happy sounding album, even though at times the lyrics are like not necessarily happy. It just has a sort of positive major tone overall throughout, which I find kind of refreshing because I feel like a lot of times we review music that's like I'm sad and I want to die. See City in Color. I was telling Esther about that today, and I was like, yeah, for his review, Grant wrote down all the times Dallas Green wanted to die, and it was like 12 or something. Ridiculous. But we're not reviewing that album. I think Arcade Fire, and I've been saying this a lot lately because it's just been true lately, really has the mixing and mastering side of it down very well. They have a huge sound stage, and they kind of cover a whole range of sounds very well while staying true to their sound as a band. I think I haven't heard bands do this better all that frequently. But they just really strike a good balance between individuality and sounds and having a consistent sound throughout. That said, I think the album is held back a little bit just by some songs that just sound a little annoying.
Like,
if you say the track name, I can probably tell which one it is. Which one? Where it's just the high voice looping over and over again.
Oh no, I was gonna say,
Is Put Your Money on Me the name of the track or not?
Yeah. That's
that one
goes,
I found. That I found a mostly okay track, but then like the chorus goes on too long. I think
the one I was gonna say was Chemistry with like the faux oompa thing that comes in.
That really bothers me. I think I understand that they're from like the little I know about the band's background. I know that they have a history of like not even necessarily looping stuff in the true sense, but they're a repetitive sound, which is okay, but just not for me as much. And I did find when I listened to this album like twice back to back, I would just be like, okay, we get it. Put Your Money on Me. We get it. Peter Pan, I did not like either. I found that was kind of...
Wendy, I'll be your Peter Pan. Come on, baby. Take my hand. We can walk, I don't feel like flying.
But that said, I feel like I'm...
live, I don't feel like dying.
I feel like I'm being way more negative on this album than I should be, and maybe that's because I'm just tired of saying good things about albums because we've reviewed so much good music lately. But overall, I found each song had a lot of individuality for the most part. I think they had a good sense of groove and motion and managed to kind of feel light and floaty in a good way. I think a lot of the music we've been listening to lately has like a really tight like gel to it, and I really appreciate that this just felt like it had a little bit more looseness and wiggle room and stuff like that. That was very welcome. Just a huge variety in instrumentation and sound and stuff. You can even see this picture inside the album, which we have here. They're just crammed in.
There's no way they recorded anything.
They couldn't have.
There's barely any way they rehearsed in there.
But they like barely fit. It's just all this
it's like a porch.
Old and new music equipment, tons of different keyboards and synths and stuff. And I think to an extent they just do synths better than almost anybody else, maybe barring like Alex Cameron and a couple others.
Nick Cave.
Nick Cave. So yeah, I really wish I had more to say on this album, and I definitely am floundering a little bit just because I'm not a speaker of authority on this kind of music at all. But overall, I did really enjoy it, and I'm looking forward.
Music's music, though.
Yeah, I know, but I just feel like I don't know much about the band. I don't even know how many members there are or how their past is informed and stuff like that. So to that extent, I can't really speak with authority. But just as a self-contained experience where you put the CD in and you listen to it, I found it very refreshing, even though I don't know that it's like a significantly unique album. I think that they just managed to have an amount of energy. I think the opening track is maybe my favorite track on the album still, is Everything Now. Just has that awesome quick like 20-second build up, and then it all clears out like the Journey the Game soundtrack. That's one of the things I love about it and this, is they build up in this, there's just this culmination of sounds that raises to like this climax kind of thing. Then it all cuts out, and then that like clear as a bell riff comes in.
Piano.
And then the whole song just kicks off with like this wicked swing, and it's just like, it's so energetic, and just like cruising along on a sunny day with the windows down to Everything Now is just like very euphoric. And one certainly gets the impression that they had a lot of fun making the album. Maybe that's entirely misleading. Maybe they hated it, but just to listen to it, it sounds fantastic. We also didn't read the Wikipedia description.
That's why I made like a small sound as though I'd been stabbed in the kidney halfway through your review. I was like, "Lord."
Everything Now is the 5th studio album by the Canadian indie rock band Arcade Fire. They're from Quebec, so they're not really Canadian. It was released on July 28th, 2017, physically through Sonivox Records and digitally through Columbia Records. That's interesting. The album was produced by Arcade Fire alongside Thomas Banglatar of the electronic house duo Daft Punk. I knew there was a connection there.
Oh yeah, I bet you did.
And Pulp bassist
That's
Steve
actually
McKay.
super weird that is the case.
Previous collaborator Marcus Draves provides co-production, with additional production by Jeff Barrow of Portishead and Eric Heigl. It was recorded over September 16 to April 17 in New Orleans, Montreal, and Paris.
April of 2017.
Yeah, it was when they stopped recording.
Wow.
Oh, and then we're just
that's amazing. Actually,
we're all over the place.
That's right up to the
what was released in July.
I know, but that's like
May, June, 3 months.
That would be like mixing time. You'd assume that's not a ton for my band. I mean, it was a lot of remote stuff, but it was like 6 months of mixing.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Also, I feel like they could have a little bit more like creativity with their title names. They're just basically, you said to me, I said to you earlier, I was like, I don't know that I could name any of the tracks because like I just pop the album and listen to it, and I haven't looked at the track list too much. And you're like, well, if you just think of the words they repeat over and over in every chorus, that's just the track list, and it's true. I think my standout tracks would be Everything Now, for sure. Put Your Money on Me, I liked, even though I feel like it went on a little bit. And actually, I'm realizing now, entirely to the contrary of what I said, I think I would put Peter Pan on standouts because I was thinking of Chemistry, not Peter Pan.
Oh yeah,
Chemistry is the one that bothers me. Peter Pan's a really good track, so redact that. We won't actually, but like if you listen, Peter Pan's very good. Yeah, I give the album probably in the high 7s to maybe an 8 out of 10. I think it's totally worth a listen. I think it'll probably get on my honorable mentions for album of the year, but it probably won't be in the top 2 or 3.
Are you really hot?
No, I'm fairly hot. Like, open the window. Go.
I was thinking of cracking this.
You can hear the bird song.
Window open.
And serve me up some M&Ms, please, while you do your review. Also, by the way, to anyone who's cripplingly depressed by that review, I feel like I have an absolute bang-up Dunkirk review coming up. So just sit tight for the Return of the King.
Here, eat this M&M that I gave to you. Okay, so,
shoot, I dropped it.
Oh, man. Jeez. Anyway, that's okay, Jason.
I licked it and then I dropped it on the dirty carpet.
It's not that dirty. I clean it.
Okay.
I clean it here. Okay, so, Everything Now, The sound of the album does range a lot, like you were saying, from like very groovy electro disco, neo disco sort of funky stuff, all the way to like really thrashy, faux thrashy punk at one point of one song, Infinite Content, to
That's a good song too.
a soaring sound on Put Your Money on Me, Everything Now, and We Don't Deserve Love. And it's not a lot of pillars of genre and style I don't think that the album stands on. And I think it wears them all pretty well. My standout tracks were Everything Now, the title track, which has this like genuine sense of like optimism.
It's grown on me since we did our knee jerks.
And it reminded me in a strange way of like that weird retro future. It's interesting that just a song could inspire these images in me. A retro future,
Fifth Element, Blade Runner.
the Fallout, no, like the Fallout games.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like that retro future. I don't know
They're
why.
like Frank Sinatra, the Fallout games.
I know.
Like,
I don't know why it inspired that in me, but there was. It could be the music video, which is beautiful. I know we talked about that, but I quite enjoyed that song. I really liked "Good Goddamn," which was one of the grooviest songs on the album and had some of the better writing. And I really also enjoyed "Put Your Money on Me," which I thought had like a really nice, a really clever triplet riff underneath a 4/4 beat. And in case anybody doesn't understand that, it's just something rhythmic that sounds really cool, basically. Although I shouldn't talk down.
No.
So that was a mistake. I apologize.
The drums are staggered to the music, and it sounds awesome.
Yeah, and it's very clever and provides a really nice kind of churning underlying texture.
Yeah.
Now, where I kind of would deviate it from it would be the following. One of my favorite U2 albums, top 3, everybody who knows me knows this, is Pop.
Probably not everybody.
And those of you who know music, and U2 in particular, know that that's a really weird choice, because that's probably their most hated album of all time.
Which is so bogus.
But I think it's absolutely one of their best, and a lot of Bono's best writing is on that album, a lot of The Edge's most creative guitar work's on that album, a lot of the best drumming and bass is on that album. It's them in a lot of ways at their best. And that whole album is a celebration of popular culture, consumerism, the shallowness, Vegas life, all these things, that the band at that point had experienced. And Everything Now kind of feels like Pop's baby brother. I feel like, and here are the liner notes, which you can now hear me unfolding in an ASMR-like fashion.
Okay, we're just gonna read the liner notes from Everything Now. Okay.
The liner notes are really cool, except for the durability factor. Not a whole lot of durability in this thin sheet of paper, but they're laid out.
Like them though.
They're laid out like a flyer, and it's like sale and all this stuff. And so for Creature Comfort, it's a box of cereal that says Creature Comfort on it. So much graphic design has gone into this album. In the liner notes on the CD, every single song has its own logo.
You get the feeling that there's a super high budget, not even in the music itself,
and
so
they're
much as
just like,
everything else.
They're like, what do we do with all this money? More graphic design.
Make a sick music
more.
video, make a logo for every song,
Yeah.
sweet CD design, sweet liner notes. Yeah, it's a
but
great
anyway,
experience.
So it's with this kind of these logos, like they look like company logos for all the songs, and the flyer motif for the liner notes. You get the idea that they're swinging for kind of like an anti-consumerist, anti-capitalist manifesto, while being faux in favor of those things, which I kind of find ironic considering they're one of the biggest bands in the world, and the band photograph pictures them in a small room that's overflowing with tens of thousands of dollars of equipment, which isn't necessarily capitalist or consumerist, but in a certain certain manner. It is. And the album kind of seems to find it hard to stick to that manifesto, to those themes. It kind of deviates, like in Peter Pan, the song, back to kind of a romance, you know. And I really don't like the lyrics in that song.
In my dreams, you're dying.
Hold on, no. In the chorus, be my Wendy, I'll be your Peter Pan. Come on, baby, take my hand. We can walk, I don't feel like flying. We can live, I don't feel like dying. And it's just like, is that really all you could come up with for being one of the biggest bands in the world? And for being not just a big band, but an indie band where people, like, you know, people who buy these CDs read all the lyrics.
I never realized they were this bad.
I know, they're
In my dreams, you're dying. It wakes me up and I can't stop crying. I just want to live forever. Keep my promises. Keep it together.
Yeah. And so they try and they do that on one tune, and then on Creature Comfort they do this kind of like,
I love Creature Comfort. That should have been on my standout track
they
list.
do,
Oh,
but
man.
they do this edgy sort of thing, you know, talking about like girls cut themselves and stand in the mirror and wait for the feedback, whatever. Which, you know, that might be meaningful to somebody, but it
I
just
like
kind
the
of
writing
was like,
in that song though.
it was kind of teen angsty to me. Some of the lyrics I like. God make me famous if you can't just make it painless. I like that as a lyric, that works. But for some of it, I just felt like the edginess was kind of forced. And then at the last track, We Don't Deserve Love, kind of shoots for and reminded me in a big way of like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, with this kind of like woozy synth line kind of underpinning this rambling sort of lyrical melody. And it shoots for Nick Cave, but it does land short. You got Chemistry, which we were talking about, which is like oompa rock, which I really was not a fan of whatsoever. So all this to say, it had ambitions at one point. Maybe they started with the song Everything Now and thought, hey, this would be great.
Which is just a bang-up song still,
it's a good song. We can build a cool themed album on this about consumerism and the 21st century and capitalism, which is all stuff that has been done to death.
Mm-hmm. See Muse.
But I was hoping that, you know, there might be an interesting twist on it, but here there just isn't. And that is okay. However, it looked like they kind of beat that idea to death with this kind of flyer packaging for the liner notes and just all their advertising for the album and that sort of thing. So I think as a concept album, it fails. And it fails in like a pretty big way.
I never treated it as a concept album though.
Well, I mean, you got I don't know what else you could want as proof that they were thinking of it as a concept.
I would almost call it more of a design motif.
Yeah, but that hints at a concept, does it not? Motif means concept.
It's a concept in that it's about consumerism, but I don't think it's a concept album in that I don't think it tells a continuous narrative like we often think of concept albums.
But I don't think concept albums have to.
No.
That's why I said themed.
Yeah.
Or
I think it is themed.
I
want more coffee?
Sure, you can give me a little bit more.
We'll split it.
I think it kind of fails at that because like it does deviate. Like Peter Pan, the song, like what's that about? Like it just seems to be a really generic love song.
The writing's not great. I never realized it was so bad.
And
I
like
should
we
have
were
read
saying,
that before.
the writing for a lot of the choruses is just
that was a
these cheap rhymes with the title of the song just kind of shoehorned in and crowbarred in the back, hoping nobody will notice. And I'm just not impressed by that. I need more from, particularly like a chorus of a song has to, you know, you can't just flag out on the chorus and go, you know, looking for signs every night, but there's no signs of life. So we do it again, and then they just sing it again. It's like,
it's the song that
I see what you did there.
You wonder why there are none of these synthy electronic artists except for like Al Cam who have good writing and good music.
Or 22 Million.
Oh
Bonnie
yeah.
Bear,
Oh
Bonnie
man.
Bear.
Okay, that's
Nick Cave.
But Nick
So
Cave's not like synthy like this is. I didn't think.
I mean, Rings of Saturn
Like
is
Distant Sky, is that what it's called?
yeah.
One track.
Yeah,
That a little bit.
What a beautiful album that is. Oh my word.
Probably not as good as 22 Million.
I disagree. So I think it fails as a concept, but it is carried by tracks which are, by and large, decent. The songs are decent, right? In the same way that Automaton by Jamiroquai, all the songs are decent there. If you have friends over, you're playing pool, you want something to groove out to, I'd totally throw on Good Goddamn. I think I enjoyed
Automaton more, actually.
Well, that's because Automaton knew what it was doing.
Yeah.
And Jamiroquai and the boys knew that they were just going for, something, hey, baby, come on over and stay the night. I've had too many drinks, but I'm sexy.
And feeling right.
Yeah.
I gotta say, just as a very quick aside, Automaton, since we reviewed it, has grown on me more to the extent that I still throw it on probably almost weekly, like while I'm doing something on the computer.
Yeah.
And just groove out. Good album. That's for free.
Oh, and Electric Blue's really groovy too. That's the one that just has female vocal for the whole thing. Very groovy.
That's a good one.
So I think it fails as a concept, but it is carried by the tracks, which are by and large decent. The cheap grooves, somewhat sappy anthems do abound, but they both do rock hard, and this is a great driving album.
Yeah.
Throw it in the car, throw it in the truck, throw it in the van, throw it in the
convertible. Throw it in the horse.
And you're gonna drive along, and you're gonna have a nice change of scenery. See what I did there? From track to track, and you're gonna be tapping your toes, snapping your fingers, and you're probably gonna be singing along by the second chorus because it's just 5 words over and over again. So I did enjoy it. Was not bowled over. This is the first Arcade Fire album that I've really listened to, and definitely the first one that I've purchased. And it makes me kind of want to go back to like Funeral or Suburbs, the albums that like catapulted them into making this kind of like half sellout thing, where they kind of made.
If this is their second law.
Well, yeah, maybe because like they made Reflector, right, which was their foray into like that kind of disco thing, and it did really well. And now whenever I hear an album from a seasoned band, I can't help but wonder. Because me, being in a not seasoned band, playing a handful of shows in comparison, even I know what gets the crowd going. And it's so much easier to write for crowds now that I just wonder what they were thinking. Are they thinking, yeah, let's write those 4 lyric choruses because everybody can sing along to them even if they've never heard the song before? Or did they think that it actually served the song? So anyway, decent album. Nothing amazing, but definitely worth checking out. And it sounds like money. Like it sounds like they just poured buckets of money into this album.
For better or for worse. You ready?
For what?
Dunkirk?
I am ready for Dunkirk. Now I have this. It's a piece of paper folded up.
I'm starting my review of it, so is this you starting your review? Because you're not reviewing it yet.
No.
Okay.
This is a surprise review of something completely different.
And now for something completely different?
But related.
Is that what it is?
No.
Or is it your review of Saving Private Ryan? I got it.
No.
No? Oh.
It's connected to Dunkirk. And it's a decently short review of something you don't know that I've been availing myself of.
Mein Kampf.
Yes. No, Jason. We might have to beep that out.
No, that's just Hitler's book.
I know, yeah. I've not read that, and I don't plan to. No, but so I've got this thing that's kind of tenuously connected. Should I do it now before either of us review Dunkirk?
If it's going to be sub 5 minutes, do it now.
Okay, I can do it. So I listened to Harry Styles' solo album.
Oh, nice.
A whole bunch. Over the past couple days at work. Just for something to do.
I will cut you off after 5 minutes.
Harry Styles' self-titled album, Harry Styles. So let me start off by just saying, if your name's Harry Styles, or if you just have any sort of normal...
Is that his actual name?
I don't know. Google it. If you're a solo artist, why self-titled album? You can't name the album Harry Styles. Your name is Harry Styles. Just think of something like, do a Led Zeppelin and just call it One. Or something like that. I don't care. But naming the album Harry Styles, or just like self-titled, is just obnoxious.
Harry Edward Styles.
That's like, I'm so angry at him for that. So, So, and I want you to listen to this because I want you to listen to the album. And then I want to continue this conversation on the next podcast we do. Because I've been meaning to listen to this album for a little while. It starts off with like psychedelic folk, which I kind of was taken by surprise, like a lush vocal layered, like a doubling kind of effect a la T-Rex, a similar psych folk sort of thing. And then there was some straight up folk on a song called Sweet Creature, so like R&B rock a la AM from Arctic Monkeys on songs like Kiwi or Only Angel. Meet Me in the Hallway was the kind of T-Rex psych folk sort of thing. And it even went so far as to kind of evoke like Ramble On by Led Zeppelin on a track called Ever Since New York. And I know I've just cited a lot of stuff, and that is kind of the album's blessing and curse. Huge amounts of diversity, which makes it a really fun listen. I think it's 8 tracks long, which makes it a really fun kind of tour, but it does feel like a grab bag portfolio. I'm Harry Styles, this is what I can do. And a lot of the songs also have repetitive choruses, and many of the lyrics do read like a 17-year-old's fantasy dream, but Harry kind of makes it work in a surprising way that I kind of didn't see coming, and I actually quite enjoyed it and would definitely not be above purchasing it and listening to it somewhat regularly. They're just love songs, like
Nothing wrong with
exactly
a love
what
song.
no, but exactly what you'd expect from a former member of One Direction. But it was quite enjoyable. Great guitar tones on a couple of them, and I assume he played acoustic on a number of the songs. Nice playing from him as well. Solid songwriting, fun songs. Sign of the Times is an amazing song, one of the best songs of the year, certainly the best pop song of the year, as far as I've heard. Definitely
from Lord.
Yeah. It kills anything Lord's written this year. Kills it dead. Have you not heard that song? Sign of the Times?
No.
Harry Styles? Just stop your crying, it's a sign of the times. What a tune.
Lord's got some
Wow.
bangers though on Melodrama.
Trust me.
Anyways.
And now Sign of the Times definitely sounded like it was probably an acoustic tune that Harry wrote and took it to the producer, and the producer went, I smell money, and then kind of snatched it from his hands, was like, we're going to use piano and a lot of strings. And like that works, but it also...
You have 1 more minute.
It also really made it kind of... Stop doing that. Seriously. That's just irritating. It also definitely made it stick out kind of like a sore thumb in the track listing. Especially it's like the second tune. And so it opens with like this really sweet, folksy acoustic guitar finger picking kind of tune. And then goes to this soaring anthem, money, you know. But it is a killer song. So it's a really fine album. It's not amazing, but it's better than I was expecting. And it's quite fun. So I just thought I'd bring that to the table.
Go
also,
ahead.
the cover is kind of cool.
Okay. Are we finished yet?
Mm-hmm.
Dunkirk is a 2017 war film written, co-produced, and directed by Christopher Nolan. It features an ensemble cast starring Fionn Whitehead, Tom Glyn Carney, Jack Lowden, Harry Styles, I don't know how to say that one, Anurine Bernard,
Oh, I don't know.
James D'Arcy. It doesn't star all these people. I'm going to skip some of them. Kenneth Branagh, Cillian Murphy.
Kenneth Branagh.
Branagh?
Yes.
Cillian Murphy, Mark
Cillian Murphy.
Rylance. That's what I said.
No, Killian, not Cillian.
Oh, Tom Hardy, and portrays the Dunkirk evacuation of the Second World War. The film is a co-production between the United Kingdom, the United States, France, and the Netherlands. I'm looking for a brief plot synopsis. The narrative follows 3 interconnected perspectives covering different but overlapping periods, on land covering 1 week, on sea covering 1 day, and in the air covering 1 hour. The 3 parts interweave to create a non-linear narrative. We're getting into the negatives already. So, Dunkirk, I think, is a really excellent movie, and as someone who sees probably only like 2 films a year in theater, it's the best movie I've seen in cinemas all year.
Good joke.
Thank you.
You're ripping on the dad jokes today.
Is that such a bad thing?
Yes.
So I really enjoyed this movie. I guess first I'll just talk about the visuals because that actually stuck out to me a lot, almost in its subtlety, but in a really good way. The color palette is primarily, I would say, gray, brown, and just overall fairly dull. Almost reminiscent of the color palette that games used in the PS3 360 generation. You know how everyone talked about everything was brown and gray and stuff?
Fallout 3
like Fallout 3 or Resistance, etc. Call of Duties
lots of rubble and broken concrete.
Yeah, exactly. But I found it had this like barren, broken, dull beauty that I found very appealing. And I think the ocean provided a welcome balance to the land, a little splash of color, but it also looked kind of brooding and ill-tempered and really just set the mood. I feel like the sets did a wonderful job of providing tone for the scenes. Like, if all of the cast was deleted and all it showed was like the frame that they were in, it still had so much emotion and like mood. As much as I feel like people use that as a cheap hashtag, it did have mood. I think the cinematography did a wonderful job of balancing individuality and a lot of close-ups on face and showing emotions and how individual everyone was in the conflict, and then cutting to these shots that capture the giant scale of Dunkirk. There were these like swooping, panning shots that just showed tens of thousands of people on the beaches. Of course, there were around 400,000, I think, in total. Didn't have that many extras, but still it showed this just massive sense of scale, which really added weight to the conflict. The premise being that these French, English, Dutch, and one more, mostly French and English soldiers, were trapped on the beaches of Dunkirk. Germans are rapidly closing in, and all the soldiers need to be evacuated. However, there's only one dock that the destroyers can land at to ferry the soldiers out. Resources are being drained, and overall it looks like many of the soldiers are not going to make it. Also, my voice is really going, so I'm sorry. I don't know why.
Your voice?
Yeah, it's just like slowly fading. And I'm trying not to have it crack too much like it's doing now.
Don't use your false vocal cords.
I don't think I am.
You do when you speak like this.
Okay. Another strength of the movie is its runtime. I can look up the runtime maybe while I talk.
2 hours.
2 hours?
Dead around 2.
Yeah. I feel like, maybe it's just a me thing, I feel like lately movies have been getting longer.
They have been, yeah.
And for no good reason.
It's part of that language, like with books or albums. You think that when there's more material, something profound is going on underneath the hood. Like,
maybe.
You know, they think, oh, The Godfather, 3 hours long, that's why it's so good. Or, you know, oh, this book is 700 pages, it must be profound, you know, War and Peace.
Shout out to it.
It's part of the barrier to entry, right?
Yeah, makes it seem
the price
exclusive.
you have to pay. You think that there must be some reward for all that work, but oftentimes now it's just long.
But I think it was a little under 2 hours. I felt like Dunkirk was very concise, didn't seem rushed, but I didn't think there was a lot that you could really cut out of it. And I think it just felt superbly well paced. I was never bored. I never felt rushed.
Not even well paced. Nicely rhythmic.
Mm-hmm.
Very pleasingly rhythmic.
Not
that it wasn't like tense or anything.
Another huge strength of the movie is, I was talking to a friend of mine today about Dunkirk, and she's a bit of a pansy. So she, because I was saying you should go and see it, and she was like, "Well, is it really gory? Because I don't like that sort of thing." I thought about that, and I thought, you know what? Not at all.
There's
none.
There's none.
It's not even
because it's a PG
13.
It's either PG-13 or 12A.
14A.
I think it might
12A doesn't exist here, does it?
Oh well,
14A.
It's
I think
a low
PG-13.
rating. It's a very low
There
rating.
is little to no language.
There's one F word, I think.
there is like no violence. Well, there's no graphic violence, sorry, is a better way to put it. But it manages to have this superb tension, and it never feels like, okay, we got to make a movie for the family.
There's no gaping hole where the gore should be.
Not at all.
Which is, and I mean,
so impressive.
Both you and I think this is safe to say one of our favorite films ever is Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, quite gory, and there's certainly a lot of
It's certainly disturbing.
And there's certainly, it's a war movie, for those of you who might not know. And that was one of the things that really struck me coming out, is like, I feel, I mean,
harrowed.
It's not the same experience as watching Apocalypse Now, which is like spiritually unsettling in some ways. But like I said, there's no gore-shaped hole or profanity-shaped hole, right? Yeah. And I'm not one to find either of those things anathema to a meaningful viewing experience.
Yeah.
You know, I was very impressed that he pulled that off without it.
It didn't feel like he compromised the film to tell the story without excessive gore and language. And I think it's better for it because it allows you to focus more on the characters and the events and the story. And
I think that, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but I think that, like, it's good for young kids to see films like this.
Yeah, and that's what I think Mark Kermode said. It would be a good family film. And I was like, he's right.
Totally a good family film. You can come out, you can have discussions about, people actually did this crazy stuff for their countries, for their loved ones.
And still do, to an extent.
And still do. And I think that could be an extraordinarily profound experience on a younger child.
Yeah.
And can you imagine being 12 or 13 and going to see Dunkirk?
Yeah.
You'd have the top of your head blown clean off. You'd be like, wow. And also, it's such an intelligent, such a graceful film, such an adult, mature film too, but kids can see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Anyway, continue.
Also, something we really don't talk about enough, maybe because we often watch films at home, admittedly still with good sound equipment, but we went to see it in IMAX.
Whoa.
The sound design is phenomenal. Mark Kermode, again from Kermode and Mayo, they've talked quite a bit about how sound designers are the most overlooked part of what makes a good film good. And so I'd like to take a moment to say that the sound design, including music, but especially the audio mixing of the film, is phenomenal. Some people say the gunshots sounded really real. What is that? A bug?
I think it's a little fly.
Huh.
I just finished my drink and then felt something on my lip and brushed it off instead of just eating it indiscriminately. And I believe it's a pretty sizable fruit fly.
Huh.
And I'm trying to not throw up. Although Adam, my coworker, ate just a dead house fly in front of me
just
today.
For fun?
Pretty much. I think he was trying to gross me out, and I just kind of was like, I see. And then he was kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because he'd eaten
Sorry,
a fly
Adam.
for no reason.
You silly goose.
Anyway.
What was I saying? Oh, yeah, the sound design.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying the gunshots sound really realistic. They absolutely don't, but they still sound great. They have a lot of weight.
It's really hard to judge, though, what an old-timey machine gun... Not a machine gun, but an old-timey
They were shooting
rifle
like M1 Garands. We were shooting a 223 the next day.
Sounds like from,
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Okay, I gotta wrap this puppy up. I haven't even got to the negatives, and there are quite a few of them. I also have two more good things, though. I really enjoyed the three narrative sources, as we said already, which were the air, the sea, and the land. I think they were all well told and contributed something different to the story. And as each narrative only featured 2, 3, 4 characters, it never got at the most. It never got too confusing, and the cast didn't seem bloated. I also thought that there were no bad actors. All 3 pilots, which I have written down here as Tom Hardy, Scarecrow, and the other fellow.
Cillian Murphy wasn't a pilot. He was on a boat, wasn't he?
We can't get too spoilery. He was a pilot.
Well, that's not a spoiler. That's how they find him.
Yeah, but it's midway through the film.
Nah.
Yeah. Okay.
First third. I mean, I'm not gonna say that, but I don't think that's a spoiler.
Anyways, they all portrayed their emotion well, even with their breathing masks on. There was a lot of talk going around, rightly so, about Tom Hardy's eyebrows, because they were good. But they all did a good job of that, I thought. Harry Styles was entirely inoffensive, which might be kind of damning with faint praise, but I don't know. He didn't have an opportunity to impress me, but what he did fairly well.
I was saying to my coworkers today, talking about this movie, and let me just say, how great is it that such a graceful, somber, and respectful recreation of an amazing turning point in the Second World War, how amazing that that's made it not only in England, where this is a popular historical tale that is retold, the evacuation of Dunkirk, but how awesome that it's become, like, gained a really solid foothold over here, and on no traction of the story of nobody's going to see it because, oh, my grandpa fought there. They're going to see it because they've heard that it's fantastic. Yeah. And that's so inspiring for me as an artist to see. Mm-hmm. People really latching on to word of mouth. But I was saying, too, what a perfectly judged acting debut this is for Harry Styles. Yeah. Perfectly judged. Like, really important film. Really good film. Solid film. With minimal lines. He doesn't have anything to really bunk up. I feel like a lot of singers who want to act in films want... Can you not play with it?
I just got the locked again.
A lot of singers want a more prevalent or important role in a film, and they just end up being terrible because they're singers, not actors. Yeah. But it was a really nicely judged acting debut for him, I think.
Definitely. And then for downsides, there were several that maybe were sort of more like, it's not me, it's you. I feel like they made a big point of it being like non-linear. Rarely did it go backwards in time, if that makes sense. Like, usually it jumped around a bit, like plus and minus a couple hours. But there were just a couple times where it jumped back a significant amount of time before...
How many can you think of?
2, I think.
Yeah, because I can only think of the one that we spoke of.
Where a major event happens and then it skips to a scene before it happens. And I found that quite jarring and a little bit confusing. Yeah. And I feel like if they had made a point of doing that more, it wouldn't have been quite so bad. And I understand, like, it's the whole 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour thing. But I feel like normally they did a better job of disguising that and making it blend.
1 week?
1 week was on land, 1 day was the boats, and then 1 hour was on air. And then I have 2 other complaints, one of which is maybe unfair, I just had a stroke. Because they also talk about how it was about kind of being impersonal, and they don't use characters' names for the most part, if at all. Yeah, they do a little bit on the boat.
Boat and air.
But the characters felt underdeveloped to me. At one point midway through, a character gets, like, hurt, and I feel like I was supposed to, like, care about it or whatever, but I just didn't really find I cared about any of the characters except probably the pilots, who I think were the best developed and had the best banter and dialogue and showed a lot of personality. And then I had one more critique that I thought of that's not down in my notes that I just thought of. Let me think of it.
Oh, you thought of it and then it left you?
So let's just have a brief pause while I think of it.
And I'll just interject and say that in terms of the underdevelopment of the characters, I think that for me, that had something to do with the anonymity of war.
I understand that. In
general, and I think that it shot itself in the foot a little bit just by nature of the character who they chose to injure. Who, if it had been, I'm not going to say too much, but if it had been a soldier, it would have felt more
meaningful.
Or right, or just it would have been easier to empathize with that, and we would have been able to relate. Okay, this is a soldier. All right, this is part of what he's doing. This is his life right now. Whereas it felt a little jarring the way it was presented, and like in order for this to have impact, we should know more about this character, because all you need to know about a soldier to feel impact when a soldier is wounded is he's fighting for his life, for his loved ones, and his country.
Yeah.
Right? That's all you need to know. And all you need to know, or all you need to see to know that, is a pith helmet and a rifle.
Yeah. My last complaint is great art can be on a popular topic and be fantastic, i.e. The Last of Us. But also, I was sitting here thinking Their Finest Hours, Saving Private Ryan.
Their Finest Hours?
Isn't that the one with John Goodman and George Clooney?
What
was it called?
That's called...
The Monuments Men.
The Monuments Men. Their Finest Hours is the ocean rescue with Chris
Oh, yeah.
Pine.
I was thinking of The Monuments Men. The Monuments...
Daft Punk.
Shut up. The Monuments...
Great war film.
The Monuments Men, Saving Private Ryan, Apocalypse Now, Dunkirk, Hacksaw Ridge. To an extent, these like World War One and Two era films are just getting a bit thick on the ground. And I understand like Apocalypse Now is not literally like World War Two, but just war films from that era.
Vietnam War.
Yeah. But I mean, you know what I mean. Like medium, like recent history war films are just so thick on the ground.
I think it's interesting that there's so many of them, and also how varied they are. It's really kind of fantastic in my opinion. Also, Hacksaw Ridge is also Vietnam War, I believe.
Yeah, I said like recent history films, like World War One to Vietnam and Korea.
Interesting. I think it is important, because they do connect us with that history that's just far enough out of reach that to you and me, Vietnam, World War II, and especially One, seems surreal and otherworldly.
Even Korea.
And Korea. And I think films do keep us attached to that history.
I suppose so.
And I think it's an important part of the remembrance of those conflicts. And I think it's, they're interesting settings, and almost everybody, like, our great-grandfather fought in World War II, along with pretty much everybody's great-grandfather.
Yeah.
And so there is a connection there, like, for me, like, emotionally.
Yeah.
Thinking that, wow, like, my great-grandfather was wearing that kind of, uniform, or he was carrying that kind of rifle. I don't know if he...
yeah, I think so.
Well, he did carry a sidearm.
He was like a repairman, but he was still a soldier.
Yeah, but, like, that is the kind of world that he inhabited. Yeah. And because of that, I do find...
an amount of
especially weight. World War II films, and when because I know he was in Italy and he was in France too, which is Dunkirk takes place. I do find that to be just stirring, just by its nature. So I still find a lot of life and love in the World War movies. And
so overall, I would be around an 8 out of 10. I think it's a fantastic film. I think if you have to see this or like Apocalypse Now, like not even close, go see Apocalypse Now. But at the same time, I also think the right answer is just see both.
I wouldn't even say that. No, sorry. Continue. I'll double back on you.
And yeah, I think it is the best new film I'm aware of for a while. Although I have just massive gaps in the films I've seen, i.e., no La La Land. But I also don't really like musicals normally. I said films recently that were made.
Okay. Embrace of the Serpent.
Oh, that's a better movie by far.
Oh, I don't know.
Far.
Yeah, it is better. Who am I kidding?
Embrace the Serpent is like, in my amateur opinion, one of the great films I've ever seen.
Amazingly effective.
I gotta watch it again.
We should almost watch it tomorrow.
Ooh.
Slap. So I wouldn't say that Apocalypse Now is better than Dunkirk. Amazingly different films. Like you were saying with the war films. Sit up. He's got his head on the table, guys.
Which is so tired.
I think we can all agree is unprofessional behavior. Drink the rest of my coffee or something.
I need to go to sleep though. I don't want to be wired on like 3 cups of coffee at midnight.
So Apocalypse Now is this psychedelic drug trip of a war film, which examines the emotional, spiritual impacts not only of war but of the jungle, whereas Dunkirk is a really poker-faced, steady-handed, almost just recreation,
Almost documentary drama.
reenactment, war reenactment sort of thing, and I find that really interesting. I'll kind of explain the story a little bit for those concerned about spoilers. Whatever, I mean, it's history, so you know.
Whatever.
Well, I mean,
I would say keep it to the first third, like we try to.
I was gonna say there's 400,000 troops trapped on the beach of Dunkirk in France, just across from Dover in England, and it was the evacuation of them by a lot of civilian boats coming over from England and taking all these soldiers over. And after the evacuation, I believe like 3/4 of
More
the
than
soldiers were successfully evacuated.
330,000 out of
Lives were
400.
saved. It was a massive victory and a turning point in the Second World War, which I don't know why I was unaware of it before. My prior kind of scruples with Nolan's style are decently known. If you're one of the 3 people who listens to this, I find a lot of his films can be cold. There's a lot of gray, a lot of blue, a lot of drab colors, a lot of characters who kind of mutter stuff and who I don't end up caring about.
Look vaguely unhappy.
Yeah, like he did well with the Batman films because that's what Batman needed. Batman needed to be navy blue and slate gray.
I think the same is
And
true
a
for
lot of
Dunkirk.
people going, "Dun, dun, dun, dun." But I don't think that I think Dunkirk has some warmth in it. Far more than what I've seen, or Interstellar. Jeez, don't get me started on Interstellar. Which is just this, like, he is kind of the Kubrick of our time in some ways, but Kubrick was making these really weird, like, artsy, fartsy, metaphorical journeys through the human spirit, and Christopher Nolan's adapting comic books. That sounds like a dig. It's not really a dig, but I'm just saying the style works better with one than the other. However, I found Nolan's style to work really nicely in these settings. It opens in kind of a small alley, kind of chase scene.
Love the opening.
Also really interesting, you like never see Nazi soldiers ever, or the enemy.
Never.
They're kind of this looming, almost Sauron-like invisible presence, which I found quite compelling, actually. And it kind of...
Actually, you see German soldiers
You do, the one time they walk past or whatever.
twice, but
looking for people.
won't say the other time.
So it opens in this alley scene with one of our foot soldiers kind of running away from gunfire. He gets over the sandbag barricade, meets some allies, and then gets out onto the beach. And suddenly the frame just expands, or it's like it feels like you really walk out onto the beach. And
That's a great moment.
Vast strip of white sand and gray blue thrashing seas, and
It looks so cold.
Skies are heavy and the clouds are bloated and gray and sagging, and it's an amazing moment. They're, the soldiers lined up all down the beach, and I love how objectified Christopher Nolan has made this film, because he didn't make it cinematic in the traditional sense. He didn't clutter people. He didn't have people running every which way going, oh, and like
no
big
fast cuts,
fiery explosions going off in the background. It is unsettling how still and organized that beach is when you first come out, because you can sense that pressure, right? Mm-hmm. But you see how an army would actually work. There has to be organization. It's not this big churning mass of people like what you see in a lot of films. It's not a ridiculous disarray of extremely handsome people running around shooting from the hip.
Very handsome cast, though.
And Nolan works with this amazing setting of great big clean blank expanses, the beach, the water, and the sky, populated by small dark figures, people on the beach, boats
in the channel and the planes in the sky, and he really like has picked I'm getting chills thinking about it, such a genius setting. And I know that's not like necessarily the reason why he wanted to make the film, but like what a delight it must have been for him to work with such clean minimalist surroundings, and to just be able to work the frame and to work with symmetry and balance and populating it and weighting the frame. And I am just finally, I feel like Christopher Nolan found the perfect setting to offset his style and his objectified kind of way of portraying events on film. This film never, to kind of continue on that, it never overextends. It never devolves into a big fireball spewing Michael Bay, people running and screaming and flying, CGI monstrosity. What CGI there is, and I would absolutely love to know what I was looking at that was CGI, because there was not much. There was really not much.
Maybe some explosions.
Maybe some big ships way off in the background. Something like that too. And some explosions, most likely. But like, very tasteful, never overextended. I said when we were on our way home from the theater that I was never sitting there going, oh, that's where the budget went.
Yeah.
That's where the budget went. And what a nice thing, because in this
the
day and
opposite of the
age,
album.
yeah, the opposite for everything now. But in this day and age, you watch a blockbuster film, and I'll just say Transformers.
I thought you were going to say The Nut Job too. Nutty by Nature.
I was not. That is not
Do
a
a review of
blockbuster
that.
in any way. But you watch it, and you're seeing they kind of want to show you, hey, look at this. Like, look at all this money we spent on this scene. Look at all this money. Look at how expensive this looks. But this never ever did that. It never flaunted its budget in any way. Just really tasteful, period correct stuff that immersed you and was just so low key that you never questioned any of it. I never questioned any of it. And that was like a huge triumph. Whoever did the sets is amazing. Whoever worked with the planes and the boats, amazing. Whoever worked with costuming, amazing. Whoever worked with hair, okay. Why are all the foot soldiers' hair the same color? That's one thing that bothered me. Did that bother you ever? Harry Styles, all the other guys, dark
Didn't
brown
bother
hair.
me, no.
And it is difficult in some
Yeah.
scenes, for me at least, to kind of tell them apart. And it would have been so much easier if one of them had like even just light brown hair.
Yeah.
Or if one had blonde hair. Like,
All I want some
like
various-
seriously
yeah.
though, it would be easy. And I'm sure that there was a reason for dyeing all their
Doesn't mean
hair
it was a good reason.
dark brown. But that's not a real misstep. Arguably the only real misstep for me is what you talked about, the randomly scrambled time. When it came up, it comes up the mole 1 week.
Yeah.
And that's the foot soldiers, and then 1 day, 1 hour. I never got the sense that a week passed on the ground,
No.
like in any way.
There were
it
no
felt
nights,
like
were there?
no, it felt like 1 day.
Yeah.
To me, it all felt like 1 day,
Yeah.
and that's fine. I'm really confused as to why he decided to make it 1 week.
I like
'Cause
the three narrative things, but yeah,
Same.
cutting back and forth. I think he just made it a week because maybe that's how it was historically, but it just didn't feel like a week. You're right.
There was no passage of time.
If he had said it was a day, I would have been like, well, that seems credible.
Completely, it felt like a day that took place in, and I'm sure he kind of wanted to remain true to events, because this is, like I said, a very objective film in that sort of sense. But yeah, there was no sense of a week having passed, and the 1 or 2 random cuts back and forth that kind of interrupt the
Flow.
linearity of the narrative were not confusing to me, because I knew what to expect. But I could totally see if you just went in, if you just went in blind and saw that, I could totally see, like, wait, wasn't he just, and they were, huh?
I do have one more complaint, actually, also, that I forgot to mention.
Go for it.
The dialogue was very good, but I mentioned to you going home, there was once when it was like a bad video game tutorial. And I don't think this is a spoiler because this is in like the first quarter.
Yeah,
of the movie.
I want to hear this because I don't know what you're talking about.
The pilots are setting out and they have like a
Oh,
radio
yeah,
from
yes,
HQ
yes,
or
yes.
something, and the people from HQ are like, hey buddy, watch your fuel gauge, gotta make sure you have enough back, you don't want to get stuck over the channel with an empty fuel gauge, wink wink, nudge nudge. And you're instantly like, okay, something's gonna go wrong with their fuel. As soon as they say that, it just seemed like, why would you mention that?
I
Otherwise.
agree. The only thing that saved that for me was the delivery of the lines and the lines themselves, and how clipped and businesslike they were, and how much I really believed I was listening to Spitfire pilots. The circumstance, the happening itself.
As soon as they said that, I just knew.
Tom Hardy's fuel gauge gets broken.
Yeah.
That's no spoiler.
That's for most of the movie.
As soon as that happens, it is kind of like, okay. But, you know, the dialogue is very clipped and very businesslike, and that kind of saved it for me on the believability spectrum. But I totally knew it was happening, you know. You'd have to be stupid to not see that happen.
Also, I hated this movie because it didn't pass the Bechdel test.
Okay, please don't bring that up, because I'm gonna just cry blood.
That's how I'm just gonna review movies. Did it pass the Bechdel test? Yes. Good
Terrible.
movie. No. Bad
Sexist
movie. No.
trash.
Yeah. Oh man.
Sexist trash.
There should have been more women in World War II.
Yes.
This is
Go-
like the longest episode we've done in a long time.
I know. We're
It's
into
good.
it.
Yeah.
And that's what I was gonna say. The dialogue I really liked because of how naturalistic it was. There was no like, so how are you? Why did you get here? Well,
They all feel like kids.
I wanted to run away from home and join the army and be a hero like my dad, but now I see that it's all pain and suffering and this is terrible and I want to go home. It's just all small talk,
Yeah.
which you don't really get to know anybody, and that's the point.
Yeah.
That is completely the point. I totally, now that you said it, I agree with what you're saying about the characters on the boat, some civilian characters.
I didn't care about them.
They were hard to care about. I wasn't quite sure who was who, and that did hurt the amount that I knew I should care about it. I wasn't sure if they were a father and two sons, if he was a father, a son, and a friend, or...
That's what it is. I only realized that today when I was reading the synopsis. It's a father, a son, and his son's friend. I thought they were brothers.
Yeah. So that definitely hurt it for me. Hurt just with those characters. For these soldiers, it totally works not knowing their names. You feel like you're dropped into the conflict with them, and you've just bumped into them.
Yeah.
You know, and you're kind of clinging together because you know, he gave you a nod and handed you an extra piece of bread or something, like,
Yeah.
you know, you totally feel like you've fallen into this situation with them.
There was also one of the soldiers who just seemed like a total non sequitur who was in their group.
Yeah, oh, for sure, yeah.
I feel like the more we talk about this, the more negative I'm getting, though, so we should end it because it was a really good movie.
It was very good.
Yeah.
I think it's the best Christopher Nolan film outside of The Dark
Batman.
Knight that I've seen, and as far as Christopher Nolan films that don't come from like a significant other source material, like
Franchise, yeah.
something that he's written himself, by far his best.
That
Like,
said, this did come from World War II.
soars above, but like it's his conception.
Yeah.
Right. Jason, for heaven's sake, just pay attention. He's just fidgeting. Like, why
I'm
are
sorry.
you fidgeting so much?
I'm just getting really sleepy and I'm trying to stay awake.
Well, just perk up, sit up straight. And yeah, so yeah, I thought it was very, very good. Great to see in IMAX on a huge screen. Really lends itself to the expanse.
It would be good in excuse me. It'd be really good in a home too, though. I feel like good pair of surround sound headphones.
Yeah, for sure.
Dark room. Yeah,
Send it.
very good. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're not sure what we're going to talk about next time. We could possibly shoehorn in some more Harry Styles talk, just because I think he's super hot.
We should review Men.
How about we don't do that, actually, because that could get a little uncomfortable for everybody. But we'll think of something to review. If we don't, maybe we'll post on Facebook and beg for suggestions.
Oh, we'll think of something. We got a couple things up our sleeves.
True.
Okay,
Let's make this exactly an hour and 15 minutes.
good night.
That's one of the things that you are best at, and that's just a hobby that I can tell that you cherish